We start off with the usual prayer for teacher and student. You can join in. By now you should all know. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Punaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cover with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So welcome everybody to Spiritual Seekers Question and Answer. As usual, I'll mute my microphone, awaiting questions that might be useful for you and everybody else in your spiritual life. We have one participant here who's asking a question, and then there's one other question that was mentioned here. Yeah. Yes.
So really, how can we use the spiritual practice, the spiritual path, when things are tricky in life? Would that be, health or work or money or the things of life, the reality of life? Because the reality of life is, Buddhists say, suffering. What areas of spirituality can we go back to try and not make the things even bigger, worse? That's a question.
Okay, thank you. All right, somebody else had a question you were about to say?
So the question is about the M. It's something that I've read about the M theory that suggests that there is higher frequency that invisibly interpenetrate the physical universe at every point, like water saturating a sponge. So that means that there is, in theory, some other universe that influence our universe and therefore interpenetrate this universe, and therefore our physical, our physical body can be to some extent influenced by this.
Okay. So the short answer to both questions, which needs elaboration, is that thought is the most powerful force in the universe. It travels faster than the speed of light. And when a thought is issued in the area, the cosmic area, which is the source of every single other vibration, regardless of whether it is in this dimension or that, everything is produced from a supreme cosmic mind, and the thinker behind every thought is infallible, and that thought will carry through and transcend and override any other thing. So that's the first thing I need to mention. If that is the case, then how do we deal, using that knowledge, with everyday issues and difficulties and problems? I don't think it's correct to say that the Buddhists say the whole of life is pain. What the Buddhists say, and what Buddha says, is that desires are the difficulty in life. And desires will cause us pain. Why should we experience anything painful? It's because we have desires. Now, even if we have a concern about higher frequencies, other dimensions, other beings, other influences, unseen and normally speaking unknown by us, yet possibly contacted by people who have a talent for tuning into that, or even accidentally it happens, then it still stems from desire. But desire for what? It is a desire for to remain safe. It is a desire to remain pain-free, free of fear, free of pain. It is, on the other side of it, and a way of feeling that we should preserve ourselves or preserve the condition that is most peaceful for us. So it boils down to the same thing. The difficulty we have is desire. Now, this manifests normally in human life, of course, the desire to love and be loved, the desire to have some kind of security. Actually, if we go around the personality development that is normally with us, we will see that each one has a particular desire according to a particular fundamental development of our individuality. And corresponding to that will be a fear. For example, if you have a desire to be perfectly right and perfect and to conduct your life in a self-directed way, then the fear of that would be fear of being wrong or being seen to be wrong and the consequences that are derived from it. This is just an example. Each person will answer for themselves what their strong inward desire is and what the contrary fear is. How do we get rid of desire is really the fundamental question. It is phrased in subsidiary ways because the product of our desire is what we call normal life. You can see it as the Maslow hierarchy of needs. We have a desire for shelter. We have a desire for food. In other words, we have a survivalist instinct. Survivalist instinct only relates to the human body. The human body wants to survive. That is, the inner intelligence behind it wants physical survival. And that is why we don't like death. We don't even think of death. All the obstacles in life are presented because nature is not smooth and not supposed to be smooth. We take nature as it is, but we are all equipped to circumvent the obstacles in nature. That also is part of nature, the positive aspect of nature. We have the faculty of doing it, the capacity to take all our negativity, all our discord, all the things that life seems to throw at us in an unkind way, and review it and say it's not actually so unkind. We can take it in a different way. It's a kind of gymnasium or a kind of play. As soon as we shift that perspective, life becomes a joy. Life becomes a thrill. Life becomes a sport. Life becomes an adventure. When we adopt this position, the obstacles are not seen to be enemies. They're seen to be things that are designed to allow us to shift our position in multiple ways and use the faculty of man as a multiple adapter, a personality as a multiple adapter that has the capacity to move around obstacles. Everyone can do it. So play the game and play it well. And different people will have different stresses at different times in their life. Some will be economic, some will be domestic, some will be personal, but all of these will be fleeting. There's a Ukraine-Russia war. It won't last. Supposing there's something called a 100-year war. Well, it's all right, 100 years. According to cosmology, the whole of the cosmological existence has been 13.8 billion years, and this planet 4.5 billion years, or 4.3 to 4.5 billion years. And man is a new arrival. And if a lifespan is there for 100 years, not many people will live for 100 years. One man who will seem to live, I'm not saying this seriously, 130 years of age. What was the secret of his longevity? You know it? He said good living, good exercise, But the most important thing, above everything else, I canceled my ticket on the Titanic. Now, although that's a joke, there are circumstances in life which are fortuitous. And there are actually cases of people who had a dream. Oh, you should cancel your ticket on this voyage. And they did it. There's a record like that of some people. That means that there's a cosmic mind pervading everywhere. There's an all-pervading medium, and cosmic mind is something like the broadcast system. This is something I repeat many, many times. No harm in repeating it until you grasp the concept. The difficulty with concepts that we are not used to is we listen to them, we absorb them, we like them, sometimes even we understand them, and then we forget them. And as soon as we forget them, life's issues or difficulties, so-called, raise their head. How do we prevent these? We prevent them through what we call spiritual life. That was your original question. It's an error to think that spiritual life is something somewhere, and secular life is something different, and secular life is real. We have to deal with the real world in front of us. This is a phrase. It's a phrase that shows us our ignorance. There's no reality in it from the point of permanence. Something appears, something disappears. Anything which is comprised of aggregates, things joined together, complexes of various kinds, combinations, will inevitably disperse, will inevitably fall apart. We shouldn't take this life in any way as permanent, and yet we do. We think the body will last forever. It will not, I can assure you. I think that my beard will always be black. I can assure you, no, it's white. I have to accept it. We think that relationships will last forever and we'll forever be young. No, it's not going to be like this. We think that we will have the energy of a 30-year-old, and we can assure you that as time advances, nature teaches us something else, and hopefully we mellow, we become more mature, we become wiser, not entrenched in our compulsions. There are some people, unfortunately, with age, they get entrenched in the compulsions. But we have the opportunity to think differently, and Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, mentions how fortunate we are just to get a human birth. After thousands and millions and billions of births, we've gotten this fortunate human birth with all the equipment and faculties to overcome all the obstacles and face them with an element of courage and strength and goodness. Strength, goodness, and courage are the key elements. I was talking to somebody when I was away. I got them to do an exercise. Oh, I wish I was strong. Because I continuously mention strength as the key virtuous characteristic that we should cultivate. We have it within us. Physical strength, mental strength, moral strength, all of this we have within us. If you're in a crisis, you'll have a strength that you never knew you had. You can lift a whole car up. There's a record, I forget who the person was, but it's a very famous instance where a man was mountaineering and got stuck, and he had no option. His hand got caught, and he had the option of remaining there, starving to death, and maybe being taken by an avalanche, or cutting his arm off and freeing himself and going on. He decided that's what he would do. And so when it comes to the pinch, we always find an extra reserve within us that will move us forward. Where does it come from? It comes from an inexhaustible source of energy which is within us. And this inexhaustible side of us is called Atman, an eternal self that is within us, a divinity, a divine nature which is truly us. The rest is peripheral, instrumental stuff. So when we talk about reality, we have to acknowledge that habit will make us read life in this way. Philosophy, in a practical way, will enable us to shift from that position to a more foundational position that solves all difficulties, just as any foundational position will. How do we solve a problem of a crack in a wall in a building? Well, we probably have to look to the foundations. How do we solve a problem on a 40th floor of a building? Again, say with a crack, we have to look at the foundations. How do we correct the Leaning Tower of Pisa? Well, we have to look, what are the foundations doing? Some difficulty in the measurement or some subsidence in the ground, and it leans half an inch, quarter of an inch maybe, then half an inch, then 3/4 of an inch. Then we see, oh, it's out by 1 foot. If you go into Christchurch Cathedral and you look at the roof, you'll see that it is leaning. There's a structural difficulty. You'll only notice it if you look up. Some kind of buttressing difficulty is there. And I mentioned it to the dean, and the dean said, yes, we're aware of this. There's a famous cathedral in England called Wells Cathedral, and where the tower is, they saw a structural difficulty. They made a supporting arch, an unusual supporting arch on the internal side of the cathedral, made it look aesthetically pleasing. People thought this is very unusual, and it's there like a bow, something like that. And it's a very unusual feature, but the practical aspect of it is it helps to support the tower. In Gothic buildings, you'll see all these buttresses, making sure that the walls are not moving outwards, keeping them solidly inwards. All these engineering solutions are there. If you don't look after the essential foundation, the rest will not work well. Any problem, we have to go to the root. The root of our own self is our spiritual nature. We are pure spirit. That's where we attend to. If you have any difficulty in your domestic life, social life, and so on and so forth, improve, increase your spiritual life means shift your thinking to such an extent that you understand that there are principles behind this thing called nature. And when we understand these principles which are there and go to that source, and then bring in the feelings of it, the practical implications of it. Naturally, we have 4 methods of doing it, because 4 aspects of the mind, we have to use all 4 in an integrated way, is much best. We're not exclusively feeling people or thinking people. So we use all our faculties. The energy that we call thinking, then we steer toward understanding what the principles are and using our discerning faculty to eliminate any actions or thoughts that will enable us to think this life is in any way permanent. It is not. We have to work. Everybody has to work. Most people will have to work. In our work, it's much better to find great thrill in all your work activities. To center your mind, to take every unit activity, pour all your energy into it, and systematically find a joy in the activity that you're doing. Supposing you're on a factory line and your job is to put a head on a doll, and you do that day after day, day after day, day after day, how will you do it without the monotony? You have to have a different way of thinking that says, let me do this task, think of it in a different way, and find some creativity in it. Creativity doesn't mean you put the doll on the other end or the head on the other end, not that kind of creativity. But some mindfulness of the physical movements that are required in doing this. Some understanding of where the end product will end up. Some pride that your part in it is essential. Without your part in it, the rest doesn't happen. A kind of revised thinking all the time that removes the monotony of your job. Same thing with any job you're doing. If you don't find joy in it, your physical health will suffer. I mentioned this last night also. Find joy in everything that you're doing and join it with bhakti yoga to dedicate it to the Lord of the universe, your most beloved, and take all your feelings and steer it in that direction. Take all your love, all your small loves for this and that, all the energy that you invest in desires, and put it in a desire to know God and to love God and have a vision of God. Put it all there. See what happens. Now, when you invest like this in nature, nature will do the rest. Nature will sort out all the other difficulties and problems for you. Don't think that you do it. If you try to do it yourself, then you'll spend lifetime after lifetime frustratedly doing it. Don't do it. You see, the resources that are there are inexhaustible. Nature is inexhaustible. There's no end to it. It's almost infinite as far as our understanding of infinity goes. So that if you want to transfer water from a vast ocean across to the other side with an obstacle in the way, using a teaspoon called the ego to do it will not work. Your own self-effort won't work. You open the floodgates, remove the obstacles. And if you feel you can't do it, then make use of prayer. Lord, please remove these obstacles for me. At least that movement is there. Lord, please remove the obstacles. This is why Hindus pray to Ganesha first. Please remove the obstacles first. The whole of life, spiritual life and otherwise, is a question of acknowledging what are the obstacles and then removing them nicely and taking on divine grace as a helping aid toward it. And everybody should find some quiet moment for meditation and reflection to access deeper levels away from trivial pursuit. And quite frankly, if we're concerned about other beings at different higher levels of vibrations and all of these kinds of things, and aliens that we have never seen before, and ghosts around the corner, then all our energy is dispersed, and that creates a distraction for us. And all these distractions will lead us to regressive attitudes. It will give us worry, anxiety, unnecessarily. Along the highway of our journey, pilgrim journey, it'll take us here and there, and it may be a so-called pleasant distraction. I like distractions. No, you may well like them, but it means you've lost your central purpose, and your central purpose requires concentration, concentrated effort. Set your compass, set your map, and go. Without any distractions. Single-mindedness, ekagra, one-pointedness. That's what's required. That's called yoga. That will solve all your difficulties, shift all your obstacles, and make you a master of nature. If you consider that the whole of life is divided into various sections, departments, like a department store, first floor is, furniture, second floor is clothing, third floor is men's department, next floor is women's department, like that. If you think that your life is like that, compartmentalized, then all right, understand that in each department you have to insert and remind yourself that in a department store with each level, you're going up. Please bear in mind that you need the top floor always. Whatever deviation or distraction is there, make sure that you come back and bring the mind back to your central pilgrim journey. The longer you take on this, the more distractions are there, the longer this journey will take. That's not to say you shouldn't enjoy the journey and enjoy the flora and fauna and adventure on the way. Do it. But that itself requires a positive attitude. It requires an interpretation of nature as being something like a supermarket with unlimited resources at your disposal. And with this, you take your adventure, but always bear in mind the goal. The goal, keep it in the background. Make a knot in your handkerchief, is Ramakrishna's language. Put a knot in your handkerchief and leave it in the corner, and then go about your life. Do that. See what happens. Increase and improve your spiritual life. Do it joyfully. Spiritual life means every moment of the day, every second. Every second. And we have helps to do that. One help will be the use of japa, lovingly repeating God's name, continuously doing it. Finding great joy in it, so that there's some kind of inner shift and movement when you do that. And that will produce faith. Faith. Faith, hope, and charity, these are the Christian virtues that St. Paul gives us. And they are true for everybody regardless. So we have to have a trusting attitude that the universe knows what it's doing. In other words, God expressed, manifest as movement, knows what it's doing. We don't have to teach it how to move the galaxies. We don't have to teach it about gravity. It knows it. There's an intrinsic law about it. We don't have to teach it how to work within us. We leave it to its own business. God knows what he's doing. So that is faith. We have to have this intrinsic, deep, profound trust. And then we have to have love. How do we cultivate love? Well, love starts with a sense of thankfulness. It starts with a sense of gratitude. It starts with an understanding that there is a flow. Love is a flowing thing. Human love is a discontinuous love that comes and goes and jumps here and there. It's conditional. Divine love is constant because the flow is constant. What is the evidence for it? Wherever you look. Wherever you look, whatever the senses are doing, whatever the internal arrangements are, we can see the expression of love, providing you with all the resources and not saying, please send me a receipt or a thank you note for all of this. Not worrying about that. Freely giving it. No tax involved. No reward involved. No heaven or hell involved in this. That belongs to theology. Leave it in the theological realm. We're philosophers. We're not theologians. Let the theologians sort out the geography of heaven and hell, where it is, which planet it sits on, what dimension it's on, and all of these kinds of things. I personally am not involved in that. I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned with a practical way of thinking based on sound principles that are discovered by the ancient saints and seers that have an element of rationale in it so that it is logical. And yet it is profound, logical, and also experientially verified. The validity is verified. And I can verify it, and you can verify it, every person can verify it. And then you see hope. We have to have hope. That is, not hope in a negative way, because on many occasions I've said, give up hope, because hope means a desire. I hope tomorrow will happen. But nobody says it. Nobody prays, I hope the sun rises tomorrow. We take it for granted it will rise. But we can say, I hope it will be a sunny day. It means there's a possibility of rain and thunder. Well, you see, this is all a mixed kind of thought. We should say, whatever comes, comes, and I'm thankful for it. But hope in the sense that we don't feel hopeless is equivalent in a sense to faith. Hope is feeling I am secure regardless of what happens. I don't have to look to the past for my hope. I don't have to look to the future for hope. Hope is equivalent of tuning in to the constant now. It is now that we find all these things. It is now that we can trust. It is now that we can hope. And it is now that we can love. But you see, this now has just gone. So we have to put in another now and another now. And each now we have to put in the same thing. Constantly we have to do it. That's the game of life and how to play it. Like kicking a football up, expecting it to come down so that we can kick it up again. Kick it up, keep it on the air. It's like a game, of passing a ball. I don't know what you call it, you see. And the penalty, you see, if you drop it, then the game starts again. You have to keep it moving. Some people will push it with the hand. Some people will put head the ball. Some people will do it with an arm. Some people do it with a fist. Never allowed to sit on the ground. Just constantly move it around, having joy, and make a surprise. You look at some person and throw it in a different direction. Have the fun like that. Do it. Play life in this way. If you have this way of thinking and remind yourself constantly of doing this, you won't have any of these fears or doubts or temptations. Life will be a joy. And when life is a joy, the whole of life and life's extension thrills with the joy. And that translates into your environment. The environment will always be good. If you say good, goodness comes to you. If you say strong, strength comes to you. So coming back to the example, when I was away, you require strength. All right, here's one exercise. By the way, nothing comes from me. It all comes from some text, some authority somewhere. You'll find this example in the third section of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, to do with siddhis, powers. We can all get many, many different powers, some useful, some not. Depends on our level of wisdom. If you want strength, then Patanjali says this. Imagine that there is an elephant in front of you. Repeat, strong, good, and also courage. Strength, goodness, courage. Do that. All these qualities you'll find in an elephant. Now, an African elephant is larger than an Indian elephant. And an African elephant is mild-natured unless it wants to charge you, in which case, not charge, there's no fee for observing an elephant. But if it decides to charge you, it doesn't do it. It gives you a warning. It flaps its ears like this. Then you know, okay, you must move on. It's giving you a warning. And then the second warning, it gives a mock charge. It charges and stops. It's sufficient for you to say, okay, I'm not welcome here, I should go. But an elephant uproots trees. An elephant is used, certainly in Asian countries, as a kind of tractor, as a kind of loading mechanism, a front-end loader that lifts up heavy materials and puts them in place. In the ancient days, all construction was using elephants. Elephants would transport heavy loads all over. And imagine now a puny man sitting on the back of an elephant and commanding an elephant. That means a man is stronger than the elephant, not physically, but by will. A man's will is commanding. Never mind, we take the strength of an elephant and see how the elephant moves. This is called the beginning of concentration. This is called samyama. Samyama has three components: concentration, meditation, samadhi. These three things. In other words, we look at the physicality of the elephant and its strength. Where's the strength coming from? Not just the limbs, not just the muscular movements, but the life force that's moving that. And all the components that together comprise what we call elephant. And these are all divine graces, and they all come from a strength incomparable that moves things that puny man has never even thought of moving. And the prime mover of everything is thought. Do that, make a nice picture of that, make a drama of that, until you feel that strength is within you. The strength of an elephant is yours. The courage of an elephant is yours. The goodness of an elephant is yours. That you are comprised of all these divine components that together make elephant. And then go back and see what it is actually. This is the third component. Then strength will come to you. This is not something I'm telling you from my own mind. This is found in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. The 24th stanza, the third section there on siddhis, powers. Now it mentions a number of different powers, and elephant is only one example of getting strength. It's a kind of headline. If you want more than that, you can take any imaginary scenario you want. Supposing you want leadership skills, then think of Swami Vivekananda standing with his arms folded. Have a conversation with him. Have an empty chair, invite him, please come through the door. Imagine him coming through the door. Please be seated. Give your pranams. Ask questions. You know you're at the Parliament of Religions. You are unafraid there. Your words mobilized some thousand people and more, and still mobilize people today when they read your words. Please tell me, how did you manage to do it? What was the key to your formula? Then keep quiet. See what Swami Vivekananda has to say, take it in, and all the qualities that he has, bring in. Look at his face, see the strength in it. If you paint 1,000 pictures of Swami Vivekananda's face, all his qualities will come to you, isn't it? You paint 1,000 pictures, 1,000 paintings of Buddha, all the peace and calmness of Buddha will come to you. If you paint a picture of Holy Mother, all the mothers and motherly love will come to you, isn't it? So we have to observe life and see life as an artist sees it. Looking at a scene, if I were a painter painting in oils, what blend would I put? What is the curve? You see somebody's face, you see what is the shape, what is the proportion, how do the eyes look? Will I capture the expression and so on and so forth? Now you're connected to that person. And all the qualities will come to you. But it depends on your imagination. Fear comes from imagination. Doubt comes from imagination. Hatred comes from your imagination. Negativity comes from your imagination. How do we deal with it? We have to produce artistic imagination, creative imagination as a counterpoise. If you have the capacity to imagine, and we all do, the only thing is we imagine difficulties. Somebody of a doubtful nature will say, since we're sitting here, I wonder if a burglar will come through the window, hypothetical case. Well, hypothetical case, we give a hypothetical solution. What if a policeman comes in afterwards? No, I don't know. Hypothetical question requires hypothetical answer. See, many politicians get asked trick questions. What if this, what if that? Well, if I were a politician, I would answer. I say, can you ask me a non-hypothetical question, please? A real question. I can give a real answer. But don't give me a hypothesis. Don't give me a scenario. If the thing arises, it arises. We have a wonderful example. Swami Purnananda, who is a very calm and peaceful nature. He was smoking a pipe and on a rocky boat, and the storm arose to such an extent that it threatened the boat. The boat will now rock and everybody will be overthrown. And Swami Purnananda is sitting with a devotee who happened to be a doctor. And he was very agitated. He said, aren't you worried? His Swami kept silent and kept calm. Well, what if the boat overturns? Aren't you agitated? Then I'll deal with it. When the boat overturns, then I'll deal with it then. No point in worrying. But it is useful to employ the skills that we have. And they must be practical, not theoretical. Talking of that, you see, there's the example that Sri Ramakrishna gives of the boatman, and I'm going to paraphrase the story, in the boat, and a great scholar, filled with scholarly pride and learning, says to the untutored, uncouth boatman, the rural man, just taking people across the waters, that's his livelihood. And since there are only the two of them in the boat, the scholar says with great haughtiness, have you studied, I'm going to vary the topic, have you studied mathematics? Mathematics? No. Oh, then you don't know the mathematical structure of the whole universe. You don't know the joy of equations. 1/4 of your life is gone. After some time, do you know geography? Geography? No, I don't know anything. I only know where I am. Geography. Then you have lost the joy of understanding the differences in all the continents and the variations of peoples and climates, and half of your life is gone. After some silence, do you know physics? Physics? Never heard of it. Oh, physics. Then you don't know the intimate structure of the whole universe. and how atoms dance and so on, definitely 3/4 of your life is gone. And as he's talking, the boat becomes unsteadier and the water becomes more turbulent and a big storm arises. And the boatman says, "Sir, do you know swimming? No, then your whole life is gone." So this is we have to be practical in dealing with things. It's not that we are ignoring issues. We're taking them and heading straight toward them, not running away from them, and taking them as nature's gift, giving us the opportunity to shift our thoughts and shuffle possibilities until the right one comes. And using our unlimited possibilities and resources within us, we skillfully go around obstacles and learn to hurl them, so that any obstacle in the future we welcome with heroic attitude, knowing how to deal with it. And whatever qualities we feel are missing within us, we can get it through our imagination, through our meditation, through samyama, and get all the powers that we require. They're already within us. We just have to access them. We have to be very careful not to be diverted about this and that and the other. It's very easy for the mind to get distracted and diverted. And after a while, the mind likes to be entertained by these distractions. We use these distractions as a kind of relief. And we read all kinds of material, some of which may be scientifically proven, others not. But what is science? And we have to make sure that we don't go into hypothesis, unwarranted hypothesis. So I have a science background. And Swami Vivekananda taught in the science of his day. The one component toward making a valid position valid, verifying something, will be we take our information from a credible authority. What are these credible authorities? In spiritual life, these credible authorities will be religious leaders, mystics, saints. These will be our credible authorities. People who have had experience and say, you can do it as well. Here's a formula. That makes scripture a kind of operational manual to show us how to do something. And we take up the recommendations, A, B, C, D, and so on. Much of which will be difficult in the beginning, unfamiliar to us in the beginning. It's all right, we do it. Our enthusiasm does it. Our motivation, inner motivation does it. That requires resolve. Resolve, determination, continuous injection of enthusiasm in it. And we expect it to wane until it becomes steady. All right. Then having got this credible authority and this information, the principles, we then have to catch it up with practice. Like any experiment we do, we have to form a model, which is our own, that is designed to verify the results of the principle. And then we engage in it properly. We do the experiment ourselves, making the mind the laboratory of our experience, until ultimately, direct experience, we verify it ourselves. But it must be rational. It must be reasonable. So if we take Jnana philosophy, which is the science of logic, and we have different aspects to it according to the system, but they all have something in common. First of all, there has to be a credible authority. There has to be some kind of inference, some kind of rationale, and then some practice, and then direct experience. All of these components have to be there. This is true of everything in life. So because somebody says something and it's unwarranted and doesn't pass the currents of science, then we have to reject it. Even science, we have to be careful, because most of science is simply unproven theory. Much of it is. Much of it is not. There are great strides in technology. The use of the technology itself is the proof of the principles. Except at the most fundamental level, we don't really know how it works. And that's the embarrassment of modern science today, that at the most fundamental level, we can call it quantum level, we don't know how things work. So this is open to speculation, interpretation, and so on. And because of the interference of world wars, or at least the Second World War, the whole question was put on hold. And it's remained on hold for the vast majority of physics people, theoretical or not theoretical, but the people involved in physics, experts in this, and they put it on hold with the phrase, shut up and calculate. Don't ask why, don't inquire any further. But theoretical physics people will want to investigate a little further. It's all right. I think it's necessary. Curiosity alone will stimulate us to investigate it. Anyway, this is one of the outstanding issues of modern science. But then you see, if you have the foundation of science wrong, the rest is wrong. Before 1905, the basic theory in science was, in physics was, that there was a medium called ether. And this ether was relegated to the rubbish dump, as it were, and replaced with quanta. 200 years ago, Boltzmann suggested that there were such things as atoms. He was ridiculed to the point where he committed suicide because modern science of that day didn't have it. They thought it was an old, outdated Greek concept belonging to Democritus. So science shifts and theories shift. But what is science doing? Science is investigating Maya, something that is completely inscrutable, and they won't come to the end of it. There'll be no final conclusion in modern science. That the philosophers could tell them long back. Oh, Maya is inscrutable. It neither exists nor is it non-existent. And this is what we call our reality, and our interpretation of it is localized to our own experience. And we say, this is real, forgetting that it appears and disappears, and that any event will not last long. It'll come. It won't last long. It was Swami Purnananda who used an icebreaker when he gave a talk. I mentioned it a few times. It says, like King Henry VIII said to his wives, I won't keep you long. He had 6 wives. So in that way, nothing lasts very long. Life is fleeting. This is a principle in most philosophies which have this idea of impermanence and fluctuations and so on. Buddhism, the key aspect of Buddhist philosophy will be this life is impermanent and fleeting. And it is only painful if there are desires which perpetuate the existence of the fleeting nature of nature itself. You can stop the whole thing once you suspend desires. How do you do it? Well, an Eightfold Path is proposed. In other words, fill the mind with all these good qualities, virtues. The key virtue will be love and compassion. Of all the qualities, love is there. The reformists in Christianity put faith as the key thing. They made a mistake in doing this. No, it's love. Love does not come from faith, but faith will come from love. So love your occupation, love the equipment that you've been provided with, love your environment. Where does the love come from? Buddhism doesn't have this final answer. It comes from a loving entity that creates a rhythm everywhere, even in you. that has certain laws, rhythmic laws, and these laws operate infallibly. So modern science has accepted immutable laws. Miraculously, laws exist. Most scientists will say, the laws are there, they've always been there, immutable. It's not very logical. So it's a doctrine. So even in modern science, there are doctrines and dogmas. And if we insist that we will continuously support these doctrines and dogmas in a way of blind faith where they are completely irrational, then we make a mistake. Not so long ago, there was something called dogma. This dogma was put out by Francis Crick, who was one of the discoverers of the intricate nature of DNA. And he was an atheist. And he still brought out a doctrine. And the doctrine is something that biologists are stuck with today. But research has shown that this doctrine is not valid. The whole idea of random selection is what many biologists take today. It's out of date. Once we got past the 1970s, we got past this selfish gene concept of Richard Dawkins. Now we realize through physiology that the cell of a body, or any cell for that matter, has an intricate, although it has stochastic qualities, that is, there is some irregularities within it, there are enough compensatory plans within it to rectify. Where does this intelligence come from? Religion calls this God. There's no room for atheism in this system, in modern biology. We have to explain where is this inward intelligence coming from. You can't bypass it. And so people propose something called intelligent design, which also goes to the other extreme. No doubt there is an intelligent design, but not in the way they think it. Not that there is a designer, like a human designer. A common example would be if God and me come to a hopeless river and we want to cross it, and I say to God, "Oh Lord, you can create everything. Please create a bridge for us." It doesn't make any sense. In an instant, we can be on the other side, isn't it? Why would we have to create a bridge? No need for it. So this idea that what we have here as this presence, as this universe, is a manifested variation with name and form and change within the structure of time and space. And it is the same being that was originally there, and nothing changed, because when we realize that pure being, all the other things go by themselves. We don't have to have a removal department to get rid of it, or a panda vehicle coming to take it away. No, it's gone. The illusion goes. When reality comes, the illusion is gone. And we experience something like it when all the events and variations disappear and time and space of causation disappear, and we go into a deep sleep called dreamless sleep. Then we experience this non-duality. All right, if there are no other questions, we'll leave it there. Good. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Merci, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Om